Just like the first one, Portal 2 is a pretty simple game mechanically. You can move around, jump, and place portals, but that's about it. So, what if we ask the question, what's the minimal amount of jumps to beat Portal 2? I would try to do it without jumping, but the first jump happens really early on, and without glitches, it can't be bypassed, so that's a no-go. First things first, the same rules apply for this run as they did for the last. No glitches, cheating, or exploits, and no getting out of bounds. Alright, let's get into it. The first chapter starts off, and very soon in is our first jump. Not only is it our first jump, but it's completely impassable. Without jumping, you can't progress the tutorial, and in turn can't progress the game. I waited around for a while, but there wasn't any luck. And immediately after, the game prompts us to jump again. Thankfully, this time we can just wait around for a bit and Wheatley will say we're doing just fine before moving on with the game. The rest of the chapter goes on without a hitch, and there's nowhere where we even remotely may have to jump. The same can be said about chapter 2 and 3 as well. All of the test chambers can be easily skipped without jumping. Sorry if it seems like I'm skipping through these a bit quickly, but at this point in the game, there's not really much to talk about. It's like the game completely forgot about the jump mechanic and doesn't utilize it at all. But regardless, we press on. Towards the end of chapter 4, when escaping from GLaDOS, there's a small section where there's a couple turrets that will shoot at you. I knew that there was a jump coming up at the beginning of chapter 5, so I decided to take one of these turrets with me when... boom. Don't know why this happened, because I was not a fizzler, but it just kinda decides to not, and doesn't. Moving on, we get to chapter 5 and the next jump. There's this section where it looks like you can't get onto this conveyor belt without jumping, but it turns out you can just walk up the handrail and make it like that. While looking throughout this room, I tried to find anything I could grab, but everything seems solid. Moving a bit further, and this is our next jump. There's a small break in the catwalk that you need to jump over to progress. There's no way past it, and I even tried walking on the pipes with no luck. I even tried walking off and crouching at the same time to try and shimmy my way on, but that didn't work either, so sadly, that's another jump. The next section is rough. You have to traverse over a couple of conveyor belts and jump a total of 3 times to get from one to the other. Obviously, we can't do that, so I decided to look for a way around. My first idea was to pick up one of these chairs, but they're pretty much nailed down. The only thing in this room and the surrounding area that's movable are these mugs, but they don't have collision, so that option is out of the question. No worries, we'll just have to try something else. Well, my next idea were these pillars. If I could leave a portal and land on one of these, maybe I could skip a jump. The first thing I decided was 1 jump was better than 3, so I set up the portals and tried just running and jumping. That didn't work. So then I tried a reportal to get a bit more speed and fly out of it. That didn't work either. Next, I tried doing a jump reportal, but alas, that didn't work either. I always got just close enough that I feel like there's an invisible wall here preventing me from doing this exact thing. After giving up and taking my 3 jumps at a loss, looking up to the vents, I don't even know if it was possible if I was to get up there. Continuing on, the rest of the chapter goes without any issues. Chapter 6 is where we start to see a couple more problems. Before long, we are introduced to the new mechanic of Repulsion gel. Its gimmick is if you fall or jump onto it, you bounce off. I think you can see where this is going. The first room isn't bad and is more of a basic tutorial, while the second is much worse. You have to use the gel to jump up onto a platform to get a cube and jump back onto it to get onto another platform and do other stuff. Doing that requires 2 jumps. There's no items I can pick up anywhere around, and not that I'd be able to get it through the fizzler. So what do we do? Before recording this video, I did find a speedrun that might have a strat that we can use to skip a jump here. If you line up the portals just right and use 1 jump to get into them, you can bounce off the gel and land back onto a beam after crouching in the air, which we can then use to get enough height to make it onto the next platform. It sounds a little complicated, but you can just barely make it up there if you crouch mid-air. The next room also looks like it's going to pose a challenge, but thanks to another video I found out about this little section of goo on the wall here. If you hit this goo just right, you'll bounce off of it, eliminating another possible jump. All in all, this section can be done with just 1 jump rather than the 3 I initially thought. Also, a side note, I do know about the stepdad strat here, but decided not to use it because it is a glitch. With this part, we need to turn off the water and put down some repulsion gel, and jump off of it to make it onto this ledge. But we're gonna find our own way around it. I found that if you launch yourself out of a portal from the top, you can get enough height, bouncing up and down, that once you turned off the water and put down the repulsion gel, you can get to it and bounce off of it without needing to jump. In this next section, I think you're meant to jump, but you can just teleport your way to the top of the glass container and drop down, so it's not too tough. Now we're introduced to propulsion gel, and at first it looks like we'll need to jump over this gap, but you can just hold forward and make it like that. Moving a bit further and we come up to our next possible jump. What you need to do here is place down a bunch of propulsion gel and a bit of repulsion gel to bounce off the end and make this gap. You would think that would require a jump, but for whatever reason, all you need to do is walk forward. Holding forward here, once you get to the repulsion gel, you'll just bounce off without needing to jump. Later on in the chapter, we come up to our next hiccup. You're meant to launch yourself into this control panel and push a button, then jump out to continue the level. At this point in the video, I hope I don't have to explain why this is a bad thing, but we need to find a way around it. Launching myself again, I found that I could land on the top. Knowing this, I'll just go down and push the button and call it good, but that doesn't work. One thing that I found out with this game is that there's these loading checkpoints, so to speak. If you don't hit these checkpoints, you can't continue. So why are these loading checkpoints a bad thing? Well, it just so happens that there's one here. Unless we fall down onto the floor, that trigger won't activate. So we'll be able to push the button, but nothing progresses. So we need to find a way around this. Thankfully, in this case, there is one. The load trigger isn't that low, so you can just walk onto the desk and still trigger it without needing to fall in. So that's a win for us, but the next one may not be as forgiving. After doing a few more tests, we're faced with another jump. Sadly, from what I could find, there is no way around this one, so it's required. It kinda sucks, but what do you do? Also, I feel this is a good time to mention the crouch fly glitch isn't allowed for this one for it being a glitch. Without that rule, you could absolutely skip this jump doing that, but for this run, it's a no-go. For this next bit, you'll have to jump into this funnel in order to progress. While a little bit tricky, if you save one of the turrets, you can use it to get up onto the ledge of the catwalk, and it pulls you in, so that's good. But just after this section is another mandatory jump. I try to find a way around it by getting up onto the railing and dropping down, or using this extra little bit to maybe bounce off of it, but I couldn't find a way around it. There's not even an area where I could place a portal to bypass it, so that's another jump. Also, the turret that I used to get into the funnel wouldn't be possible to use here because of the fizzler. Progressing further into the game and we find yet another loading checkpoint. So in order to progress this section, you need to teleport onto this little walkway thing, enter a loading screen, then jump up onto a platform and make your way out. Sadly, there's not a lot we can do here. First thing I tried was staying down below and just placing a teleporter all the way at the top where we need to go, but since we haven't activated the checkpoint, that section isn't loaded. Lovely. After some tricky portal placement and movement, you can land onto this platform, but the game still won't load. You have to go down onto the graded floor in order for the game to progress. The next thing I tried was to shimmy my way off the side of the platform to trigger it but not actually fall, but that doesn't work. So despite my best efforts, that's another jump. Now for the final section of the game, the Wheatley boss fight. I honestly thought this fight was going to be a little bit harder, but you can kind of just launch yourself upwards with each one of the cores to place it onto him, so it's not bad. I actually found this fight incredibly enjoyable. So after we put all 3 cores on him, we place the portal on the moon to send him to outer space, and the game is done. So that's that. You can beat Portal 2 in just 9 jumps. I do think that this is the minimum regarding these rules for the game, but I would love to hear anything that I missed in the comments down below. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good night.